Hello, hello. We are live now. Welcome to Learning Clan. It's our very first live session. Learning Clan is Clanet's own format where we are recording our podcast and having sharing our ideas and having the conversations about learning and training and stuff. But now actually have our first live session with Chris and Aino, and we have a really good topic today. Welcome, Chris and Aino.
Thank you. Very
Thanks,
exciting.
Anthony. Yeah, yeah. Let's see how this
So
goes live.
yeah, we had little struggles there when we started. We didn't have any audio, but now everything should work, so everything should be okay. But our topic is really good topic for every course creator. So any organization, any training manager or any HR person or product trainer, this would be the great topic for them. Just like how to make better courses using learning design and AI. And actually, it sounds first that those are not connected together, like really manual structuring kind of thing, and then we have the AI which automating everything, and you don't have to even think that this doing your job, or at least we are hoping that that would be the case in future. But I think we should start from the beginning, like because there's people who are not really familiar with the term learning design. So, what is actually learning design? If Aino can start, what's learning design is?
Yeah. Thanks. I think learning design is like a systematic process of training or creating courses or learning situations. So basically, if you're going to have a lecture, you are doing learning design when you are designing what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, what kind of tools you're going to be using. Of course, in our case, we're talking about online courses in Planet. So basically, it's the process of creating those online courses in a systematic way. And it has some different phases. There's some different models with learning design, but that doesn't really matter in a way. And basically, it always starts with analyzing the needs, analyzing the audience, setting up learning goals. After that, you make some choices on how do you deliver your training online. Is it fully online or is it partially online? So maybe like some hybrid model. Then after that, you start creating the content, um, assignments, videos, whatever you are using. And then after that, there's a process of course, implementing that. So maybe piloting it, and also, of course, evaluating and seeking for feedback and kind of thinking about, okay, what did we learn? How can we um, uh, make our course better based on all of this experience or these steps that we have already done?
Yeah, ADDI model could be good a resource to search if you are more
Exactly.
interested. But Chris, what are the benefits? Like this sounds good. This sounds logical. But what are the benefits of using learning design, or is there any?
Of course, there's benefits. Um, I think the obvious one and the sort of general benefit is that you're really um, thoughtfully thinking about all the elements that come together to form an educational experience to achieve a specific goal. So you're really focused on what the like the outcomes and goals of the educational experience are, and you're constructing in such a way. So yeah, that's a long way to say that you tend to achieve your goals better. But what that actually means in practice, and maybe particularly in online, where we face some challenges with things like engagement, is we can enhance learner engagement. So with careful design and careful sort of thoughtful process about the like different interactions that people are going to have, the different ways that they're going to interact, not just with materials, but with each other and with their own like sort of thoughts and learning process. Thinking about those tends to lead to more engaged learners. or at least gives us the ability to engage learners more deeply. And I mean, countless sort of studies show that the more engaged a learner is, the more motivated they tend to be, and that tends to mean that they have a better learning outcome. So that would be the other, benefit that we get here. We get better engagement, we get better motivation, we get better or improved learning outcomes. We also tend to get more efficient and effective learning experiences. It's a challenging topic, even for professional educators, to create really solid learning experiences. Where do we cut things out? How much is too much and what's too little? And by really practicing learning design processes and ideas and applying them to our programs, we tend to get a more effective experience. And so again, when we're talking about online learning and especially professional learning, efficiency is a huge factor here, and contributes to sort of the motivation and the experience that everyone has.
I would also add maybe like what is the benefit of learning design for the course creator. I think like not only like the outcome is good, but I think the process of learning design makes such a complicated thing as creating a course, especially if you're doing it the first time. It creates you a path where you are like focusing on one question at a time, or like a set of questions, instead of it becoming like this just huge clump of things you need to do, and like it creates you a structure and a path that moves you forward in that process, and it just simplifies the whole experience for you. At least I've had many customers tell that, like, when we started this thing, I was so like anxious because there was so much to do, but all of a sudden we were done because we just did one thing at a time. And I think that's the biggest benefit for like the course creator, that it creates the structure and clarity in a sense.
Yeah, and especially in those cases when you are in your organization and you are not a training manager, that the course creation is not your primary job. It's your like secondary job. So then you would probably want to have some clarity where to focus first and where to second, and what you should do in certain steps. So I think it would benefit a lot of cases when you don't actually do that as your primary job.
Yeah, I find it somewhat amusing, the parallels between the benefits to course creators and the benefits to learners, or the learning process. Like, it's always this kind of thing about like, what do we want to do for learners? We want to break it into small pieces so it's easy to manage and digest. And effectively, learning design is doing that for the, so it's really like sort of meta in that way, that it's doing that same thing for the people creating the programs. It's breaking it down into manageable pieces, easy to accomplish tasks and goals.
Yeah, I think we could go to the pitfalls of creating courses, because I think it's related to this whole topic. Like, now we have like tell the story that learning design is changing the world and is the best thing what we have invented in human life. But what are the pitfalls where we want to use learning design, or when it's like really useful? If you can, like, maybe Chris can start like 3 pitfalls. What you normally see in your daily life when you're doing things with your customers in Planet?
Yeah, sure. I think I'm going to go ahead and snag the most obvious one here, which is a lack of good goal setting. This sounds like a really obvious sort of thing, but I'm almost consistently amazed, and so are the clients and our customers who we work with. They're always amazed at how simple it can be to set a really good goal, but not having a clear goal going into your process. You're like, oh, I need to make a course on X. Isn't really a goal. So establishing a few really clear learning goals that you want to accomplish is this sort of absolutely critical first step. And it's kind of like the main like anchor point of your compass. Like, if you don't have that, everything else is just going to be more complicated and more difficult and not work out as well. So I think that's a big one. Another one that I encounter a lot is a lot of focus on the content, or this confusion of content equals learning. And like, the content is important, and it's one of the ways that the learning happens, or it's one of the things that helps enable the learning and the learning processes, but it's not the learning itself. And putting too much weight on the content versus the interactions that people are going to do, what they're expected to do with it, how they're expected to engage with it, sort of carry equal weight when it comes to pulling out relevant information for individuals, the learning aspect of it. And maybe the last one that I would point out would be not considering the audiences. It's an easy thing to do, and I think it's easy as well because, especially if we're talking about professional training or organizational training, they kind of know their audience. It's the rest of our team, or it's our customers who are training about this product. But those things exist as certain profiles within the company, but they don't necessarily exist as learning profiles. And the same way that a sales team or a CX team might go over, the customer profile, who's buying a product, why they're buying a product. You kind of want to do a similar thing with learning. Who's doing the learning? Why are they doing the learning? What do they need from the learning? What's the rest of their environment and sort of day like? And so for me, those three considerations are sort of the absolutely most critical ones when it comes to starting any learning design process or any course building process.
Yeah, and to kind of continue from there, I think that in my experience, kind of often when we start this process of learning design, the customers quite often, they kind of try to steer the conversation towards the content. They want to know, like, what are the best platforms to use for this and that, making gamified experiences, or how do we film the videos? But then, exactly, like, I know that those are really relevant questions, but they are not the first questions to think about. So I think always establishing, like Chris said, those clear goals, and then establishing the audience. Who are they? Why are they here? Those are the most common places where I can see that courses, or I can see courses that haven't considered these. So, for example, with learning goals, is that if there's no learning goals, the outcome is that there's just a little bit of this and that in the course. Maybe it's structured in some way, but it's not building up to any like outcome. There's no like final thing that's happening. It's just like, it's a material bank in that sense, and it's not a training. And also, maybe with the learning goals, I would also say that many of my customers, when we've talked about this, is they've then later on kind of reflected that the learning goals was the most important for themselves, to keep them on track and not to get lost, because content is all over the world. And especially your subject matter expert, you might be in love with your topic and your content, but like, that's a very risky situation, because then there's like nothing stopping you from adding that content, and then it kind of loses the focus. So I'm definitely agreeing with Chris that what you said was really important. Maybe if I also say about the audience, is that I've only had one customer, which was this accountor Finago, who came to our learning design workshops, and they had already interviewed, I think they interviewed maybe 10 like end users, the audience. Who are they creating?
That's impressive.
For? It is. And like, I didn't even tell them to do it. But so that gave them a lot of like insights in and vision. I think it was really important, like starting point, that they had this idea that okay, it might be important, but they got this like answers that okay, this is actually needed in the first place, this is something we want to invest time in, and also like they understand the customers like or like the end users lifestyle and what kind of like things they would appreciate when they go through their thing. So I think that is definitely key things.
Yeah, and maybe to connect to that, I know, because I think like we also don't want to like scare people or put the suggestion that you have to be out there like interviewing everyone and collecting. You can make guesses, but I think like regardless of how you collect that information or make those choices, I think the idea of like evaluating the course, collecting feedback after the course, like these kinds of things, these are kind of the like lazy steps that people don't want to do, because there is a lot of work that goes into regardless of how you make it, there's a lot of work that goes into creating a course. There's a lot of elements, there's a lot of stuff, and then there's the whole running of it and monitoring it, and so like it's understandable that at the end people are kind of done, but again, that like critical step of if you want to like have successful learning, there's you need to do all of these things, and then you need to evaluate it. You need to check how well it's run, and you need to hear from your learners afterwards. Again, it doesn't have to be in depth, but gaining those opinions, gaining some insight about it, and then iterating based off that, because the odds of you getting it, well, I don't even know if there are odds of hitting it perfectly the first time.
No, yeah.
I think it usually always requires review and refresh.
Yeah. I think also what we have seen is this like desire for perfection, that you're just like creating everything. You're spending a lot of time doing something, and then you evaluate it. Or like the idea would be that don't spend too much time, just do something. It can be like not even such a good version, but just do something, evaluate it, then you get the feedback, then you can make a nicer video, you can make it nicer experience. But we can kind of see that sometimes people want to get it right the first time, and that is a little bit impossible goal.
Yeah.
Data out of the first course what you're making. So basically it's just like focusing on the really, really basic stuff and publishing something, and then you are getting the data out of it, like how well it's working, what is wrong, what you should like, because customers and your learners, they are giving feedback, and then you know that okay, they are not understanding it, and the feedback could be like straight feedback that they are like commenting on stuff, or maybe you have an assessment, and then you would know that okay, they don't actually learn, they are not learning using my course, so or being in my course, so that's the feedback what you're getting. But the one thing what I like to add in there, because I heard this whole thing from you guys like all the time, is the basic practical information stuff.
Oh yeah.
So that's the like funny for me, because I always remember, and I have told this story a couple of times, but when I was in university, and there was like some professors who always put the information what you are going to learn in this course, what are the materials, what you should do, and this is the schedule and stuff like that. And then when we are going to online courses, this whole thing misses, and you don't even have like a perfect title or like even good titles for your modules or your contents and stuff. So that's like funny, because that makes the course like immediately much better course when you have some description what we are actually doing in here.
I think like guidance is super important, and it is a little bit like it's for the subject matter expert, it's like a little bit the boring thing because you love your content and you love making that content, but like it's all about you creating that path for that learning path for that learner, and you need these like pillars that are telling your learner what you are expecting, how long will this take, um, and that sort of stuff. Like, for example, I see this quite often is that people post maybe a question for the learners, but then they don't tell them anything how to answer it. Should they comment somewhere? Should they write in their journal? I don't know. Should they call the teacher and tell, like, whatever? Like, it raises a lot of unnecessary questions. So that's one really easy way to kind of ensure that your course is good,
Yeah.
is to look at this.
Yeah, it's amazing. Maybe just to sort of carry on from that, like the idea of the learning goals, like those, we emphasize that they're really important for, you know, the people creating the course. You need to understand why you're doing, but they are equally important and should be said to the learners. Like it should be as clear to you as it is to them, or as clear to them as it is to you why they're taking this course, what they're going to get out of it. Like that is, yeah, those are for everyone. Those are really for everyone. And then, yeah, like you said, instructions. I think especially in online formats, we haven't done a really good job, we plural, as a society, in our understanding of online learning.
That's us.
We not us personally, not anyone personally, but I think we as a society, we sort of thought online learning, great, we can democratize things, we can put it, it'll be faster, it's more accepted. But like, think of how easy it was when you were in a course or something in uni or high school for you to put up a hand and ask a question when you don't understand. That capability is largely removed online. And so removing, like, my recommendation a lot of the time to customers and clients when we're working together is, like, if there's a question you can answer it. Like if there's a question you predict they might ask, or that they might have about a certain, like, it's better to provide more answers to questions than less, because it means that the learner's going to have a smoother experience going through, and they're not going to wonder, yeah, how do I answer this question? Am I supposed to comment? Am I supposed to write an essay? Am I just supposed to think about it? Like, yeah, you want to remove the barriers for them to engage.
Yeah, and doing online courses is just not as spontaneous. Like, it can't be as spontaneous as you can kind of facilitate some face-to-face learning situation. And exactly, it's because of that. Face-to-face situations, you don't have to think about maybe everything, because you have that connection. They can ask, you can improvise, but that doesn't. It's in online learning. It's very different.
You're basically saying that it's not about the putting just videos online. You should, like, think of the overall structure. You maybe want to have, like, interactive things that you can, like, let's say, communicate or interact with the material, or maybe you have assessments or stuff like that, which makes the course better than just, like, having a YouTube video. Because those YouTube videos, I think those are good in, you are just having a tutorial. So then like one video would be, like, great, but if you want to learn something, so then you have to have the, like, actual work, actual, like so you have to do something when you actually want to learn something new. But if we are going to the content topic, I think Chris already highlighted this whole thing, but if we can briefly go through, because it's also linked to the AI part of the things, but why the content is not the biggest problem. And, like, I think I can little bit put the pass in your corner, in the sense of, like, the webinars to courses idea, what we have discussed earlier. So why those kind of things can help in the content creation, and maybe what would be the future of content creation as such in the learning environment. So if you, Chris, have any idea of that.
Yeah, I had a whole bunch of points on this. Not exactly from that angle, but I think I can go from there. So I guess I would start by saying that content doesn't need to be difficult, and it doesn't need to be like a challenge to make. But I don't know. Let me rewind here. I think the real point that was standing out in my head when you started talking about this, Santari, is I wanted this to address this misunderstanding that content equals the learning that we kind of touched on. And I think that that's sort of in part to things like YouTube tutorials. Like you said, we can have these great like tutorial videos. So we kind of think that that's enough. And okay, now I'll make the jump to the webinar thing. So like webinars are a great example where, like, you know, what we're doing right now, there's a lot of nice stuff being talked about. People can join, they can watch a video, but there's not a lot of value that tends to come after that webinar. You might make some great notes, maybe you get a good idea from it, but it's very sort of time bound to that moment when the webinar is being given, even if it's recorded. So, for example, you could make a mini course out of a webinar just by taking that webinar recording. You could chop it into a few pieces if there are some main topics. Provide some summary sheets with key points, and outline a small activity. If it's a process-oriented thing or a skill we're trying to teach, go and try these 3 steps now on your own. So it's pretty easy to take sort of standard content that we have. It could be those YouTube instructional videos or whatever webinar recording you have, but just by changing how we're thinking about what value they provide, and by sort of supporting all the ideas in there with small additional resources, you can turn a sort of webinar recording into a course with not a lot of work.
Yeah, I think like if I think about this, like why the content is not the biggest problem is that like it's related to those things that we talked earlier about. So if there's a course that isn't really performing as well as we'd like, I will say that 90% of the time it's because there's like unclear learning goals, or that it's not enough consideration was given to the audience. So maybe the course just isn't relevant or interesting for the audience. So in that case, and this is, in my experience, this is like 90% of the time. However nice content you have, let's say beautiful gamified micro course experience, to put some trend words in there, like it's not going to increase the completion rates if the number one priority is that you're creating something that is valuable and interesting. Maybe second thing, you have to be able to communicate that this is interesting and valuable for you, my learner, because of these reasons. These are the things you will achieve. It's a little bit like marketing tactics, like we talked about. And also, if we think about, like, I think what you or Chris kind of going for is that there's so much content in the world that we can use already ready-made, really good content. And more content is being created all the time. For example, these sorts of webinars or live streams or whatever, a lot of corporations are using that, but they're not maybe like shifting their mindset that, oh, hey, we can actually utilize this content in many formats, in many ways, in different places, in online courses. I think that's kind of something that hasn't really been talked about.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and maybe I could add to that. Like, I think what I was trying to get at, and I think what we've both been kind of dancing around here as well, is that like content is just this one component, and that real learning requires interaction, it requires application, it requires reflection, and this is sort of all tying into what learning design involves, right? It's how we, so yes, your content is great, and yes, there's so many options for you to use, and yeah, have stellar content, but not to get too distracted by that topic alone, and remembering that like real learning is this really complex series of interactions between individuals, their own thoughts, materials, content, the course creator, so on. So like, you know, as many as you want to build out from there, but it's complex, and we need to give attention to those other areas.
Yeah, and I think the takeaway from this discussion is that the role of course creator is like, it's not like totally changing, but it's kind of like changing. That it's more or less that you're taking a look on the structure, the overall view of the course, not not necessarily to the content itself. Whoever can make the content, if it's like relatable and related to your course, but as a course creator, you have to think of the whole structure. Who is going to be there? What are the goals? What interactions you should have there, and what kind of content there should be. But it doesn't mean that you have to do it.
Yeah, absolutely, Santeri. That's well put, and I think that, you know, this is a really good segue as well to this topic of AI, and the AI tools, and how that will affect the role of the course creators and designers in the future. Because, like you said, it's sort of, the role is sort of shifting a bit to be this really like considered curator of what goes in, and sort of orchestrator of all these elements, where they go, when, what's the relationship between them and the learners. That's really becoming what it means to create courses. It's really going to be less and less about making the content and designing like killer PowerPoint decks or whatever it is, or infographics. We can now ask smart machines to create a lot of that for us. But what it can't do is it can't understand your audience needs. It can't understand their behaviors or their like desires and goals. That's going to be the role of learning professionals and designers and this stuff is to really like preserve and I guess weave in those human elements and those human needs into this very like tech forward machine way of doing things.
And I will open up this Aino laptops or screens, screen sharing. So this is like, if you're watching this as a video, this is like, how can you use AI in course design? So I think the key element of this is like the 3 different steps what you can use it. So maybe I don't know if you can run this through, like what we are meaning about this.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about, you know, putting this simply like the beginning of the process, the middle of the process, and the ending. So in course design, it's first there's like the analysis phase, then there's the design and development phase, and then there's the evaluation phase. So how can you use AI in these different parts? Maybe one thing before I go exactly to this is that most course creators at the moment, they are doing it in this design and development phase. So they are designing different kinds of content. They're designing multiple choice questions. They're writing summaries with this. So that's why there is a lot more bullet points in there. and it's related to what Chris also just said. But of course, I think AI, generative AI, can help you if you think about this analysis phase, it can help you outline your learning goals. It can't decide those for you, but it can kind of help you in that thought process that you're going. You can create like, I have these sort of ideas. Can you help me formulate and iterate on those goals? In my work, I feel like learning goals is quite difficult concept for my customers. So I think this is very beneficial, is that you just get something out there, you get some examples, then it's easy for you to like change the verb here and there or like change it. But it's really helped, I think, my customers to understand what I'm talking about when I'm talking about learning goals. One other thing I've been using AI for is when you're creating learner persona, is that it's not going to tell you what your audience's needs are. You have to gather and collect that information yourself. But I found it very useful that if I put that information into, I use ChatGPT, for example, I put it in there and ask it to create me a learner persona based on this. It actually, like, it does that. And it's actually pretty good job. So that can be also a tool for you to use AI in. Of course, like, then there's different, when you think about communication, I was thinking about like, sometimes you have to a little bit think like, okay, why should my learners, complete this course? Why should they invest their time in? So using AI to find those selling points could also be very relevant and interesting, because it can kind of come up with points that maybe you haven't thought yourself, or you're maybe a little bit blind to. So here's just a few things from the analysis that I've been using. But with my customers, quite a lot, what we have been doing now, like more and more, for example, just recently, I gave a assignment for my customers to create a course outline. So we first had these sessions where we defined the goals, defined the audience, and then I asked them to come into our next session with a course outline. And that was actually, it was really good, and they were really happy to kind of get that experience. So I think this is going to be like a very common use case, probably in different like online learning platforms, is that it could kind of create some sort of structure for you pretty easily, based on your description of the course. Other things we have been doing is, I think, especially one critical or difficult part of this course creation process is designing assignments and assessments. Especially customers, they're not used to doing that. They don't have maybe experience. So coming up with like exciting examples or exciting scenarios, that's really difficult to do. And you almost have to have like communications degree for you to like, be really good at that. But I think this AI is now making that a lot easier. So we've been doing, for example, like, just, it could be just simple, like, okay, here's my topic, create multiple choice questions for me on this one, on this topic. Or it could be like, can you like come up with a scenario or a story, and kind of it becomes more easier to use, for example, these scenario building tools, in this case, and creating, for example, gamified experiences, because that's not also something that's super easy, because you really have to be really creative and kind of have this vision. But AI is definitely making that a lot easier. And I have, for example, been using that to create different scenarios and kind of like exciting examples with the AI in topics that I'm not really like personally I'm not definitely a subject matter expert in, but I can use that AI to help me in my process and design process. And then maybe lastly, I could put this talk about this evaluation just quickly. The nice thing about AI is that it can give you feedback. So that's also one really good use case you should use it in, is to like input something and ask it to tell you what it thinks based on, of course, give some context, like what do you want feedback on, but definitely something that if you want to challenge yourself, can be good to do. And also I've been using it to design other feedback processes like questionnaires, interview frameworks, um, I don't know, whatever, almost.
Yeah,
Or
it's
improvement suggestions.
those are good examples. I know. I think like what I gained from the examples that you've given in my experience is that, yeah, it really like kind of maybe democratizes or opens up a lot of these sort of approaches to learning or scenarios that were otherwise too time consuming or too like nuance and niche knowledge based for a lot of people to easily create. So like I thought of one great example where they were doing some like soft skill training. And so that sort of stuff is really about interpersonal relationships and stuff like that. And we have a lot of information we can give people, but this is one of those things where, practice is really important. So, there are a couple of ways that you can just use an AI or those AI tools to give you like sort of superpowers in that way. So creating a role play scenario is, like basically you're a storyteller at that point. You're a storyteller and a script writer and a director. You've got to come up with the scenario. Okay, you might have some that are sort of closely related to your sector, but then you have to write the roles. You have to establish the conflict, the problem, and you have to let these people kind of, and that's a challenge. But it's much less of a challenge if you can grasp that, hey, that's what I need to do. And here are the like base facts that I have. That stuff's easy for everyone to get. And then you can go to one of these LLMs and you can be like, look, can you write me an intro dialogue for this? Can you write me the content? And of course, again, I'll always stress like the human oversight. Never just take its, we're adding that like value. We'll tweak whatever it puts out, but it's a great way to create, for example, like role-playing sort of scenarios where people can practice these kinds of skills. You can even take it a step further and just have them go chat with if you're savvy enough, you can create like, I don't know, like an angry customer AI. Is not actually that hard to create.
Yeah.
Or chatbot. And you could create that and have everyone on your sales team interact with this like disgruntled customer or something like that. So it's actually opening up some really cool processes because not only in that case are they interacting with them, we can preserve those logs. We can then start to create personalized learning out of that. There are so many like interesting options opening up, and yeah, I'm excited to see people embrace it. And how that will go.
Yeah.
And I think it's emerging into those platforms as well. Like in any kind of like software as a service platform will offer like some kind of AI tool. So you could like benefit of those like in different scenarios. But what we can say about our own ideas, what it should be like when AI and learning design will have the connection and coming inside Planet. So what kind of ideas we have, what we want to have in future?
This is my favorite topic as of late, and where I'm spending a lot of time. I think the first thing we are working on is a way to simplify and not automate, but sort of make more accessible a lot of these learning design processes for clients, so that somebody coming in to use ClanEd and create a course in ClanEd, doesn't need to go through 6 hours of workshops with us. They still can. We like doing that, but sort of a co-pilot tool that for these really key points that we've mentioned. I think the first code, at least, that we want to crack is how can we ensure that good learning goals get written for every course? How can we prompt the people to write them, and how can we then incorporate those into the course structure? And then sort of moving along that sort of priority thing. What kind of instructions are going to be there? I would say that we're probably less focused on like content creation tools so much. That's certainly a part of it, but there are probably going to be a whole host of tools that focus on doing that much better. So I think it's more about, for us, the tools that act as a sort of guide and a check, and make sure that you have all of these pieces that we've talked about that are so critical to successful learning. And maybe it grows from there. Maybe there's different paths for different learning scenarios or different objectives. But that's what I want to see us put out.
Yeah,
what we're working on.
Yeah, I think like our approach is not to like, how can we make it easier to create multiple choice questions, which is like when ChatGPT came out, that was what people were using it for. But like, how can we ensure that our customers are creating really good online learning experiences that are taking in a lot of these good practices that we know from learning design, research and our experience creating those courses. So, and just kind of making it so, like, for example, practical information and what kind of descriptions you should have. Like, if there's a tool that will tell you like, hey, modify this part, or like kind of gives you suggestions or hints or something, then, you become more aware that, okay, this is something I need to look out for. And also the platform looks out for you as well. But yeah, really, really exciting.
Yeah, I would say, I know that it's like our focus is less like making those multiple choice questions and more making sure that the learners are asked those multiple choice questions at the right time in the right context, because that's what's going to impact the learning, not the questions themselves.
Yeah. The outcome is more important than the actual content inside it. But yeah, we are near to our end of this whole discussion. It has been like really, really good discussion, but maybe we could have just brief conclusion words that what you should think of learning design, why you should utilize it now, and how you should utilize it in future, maybe using AI, and what is important in learning. So if you have like really brief ideas, what are the takeaways from this whole discussion?
I don't know. There's a lot of different things, but maybe my idea is that AI is cool. It will change a lot of things we create, or the ways we create content. It will, increase the possibilities. It will make it easier for us to create really good learning experiences from that content perspective. But it won't, if you're not doing those learning design steps yourself, for example, thinking about why and who and what kind of people they are and what their needs are, that is still something that you will have to be doing yourself. And good to start learning that already now, and start learning how to use AI already now. Maybe that's my conclusion.
Yeah, I don't know. I could offer a nice metaphor or something here, that We wouldn't, most likely you wouldn't go baking without a recipe. So you probably shouldn't go learning without some learning design, because it's kind of that formula. We all know what flour and sugar and eggs do, but the order you're combining them in and their ratios are kind of critical to whether or not you get like edible cookies at the end of the day. And I would say the same thing for learning design. If you get effective learning, it's that. So we need to do that, and then maybe to connect it to the future and to AI is that the future tools and the tools that we're really pushing to get out there are things that are going to help you construct those recipes, and they're going to make sure that you have all the ingredients there in the right order and in the right quantities. And I think that's the exciting part for me, because it's going to make making effective learning a lot easier and a lot more accessible.
Yeah, you're a hungry man, because you have already done a apple pie recipe course
That's true. It's true.
in our academy, so you can find that course from there. But yeah,
Yes.
I totally agree on that. But hey, thanks, Chris and Aino. This was our first live session in our Learning Clan live sessions.
Yay.
And you can find this whole thing from our podcast in next month, probably maybe even faster. But we are going to start this whole live discussions in English and in Finnish from different topics. So please follow our channels on social media, so you can find out when we are doing our next ones, and you can push those put those comments on various platforms, and we will answer those later on if you weren't able to put those comments already. But thanks for this session, and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Take care.